So now we are entering into the second topic under Charter Act of 1813, that is factors responsible for opening the doors of British trade in India. So here, unlike earlier legislations such as Charter Act of 1793, which had reaffirmed the East India Company's monopoly over the trade. So 1793 Act, while we are discussing the 1793 Act, we have said that the monopoly or the exclusive rights granted to the granted to the East India Company were still alive, but only the nature was changed. Only the nature of exclusive rights were changed from the indefinite extension towards periodic revision. The 1793 Act has changed. The 1793 Act has opted for option 2. We have given two options for the legislation. That is, option 1, curtailment of the exclusive rights. Option 2, changing the nature of the exclusive rights. So 1793 Act opted for the option 2, and it actually changed the nature of exclusive rights from indefinite extension towards periodic revision. So the same thing is said here, which had reaffirmed the East India Company's monopoly over trade. But the 1813 Act introduced sweeping commercial reforms by opening the Indian markets to private British merchants, private traders of the British. So the Indian gates were open for them. So this is very disastrous for India, because earlier, if any, this one we have discussed that earlier, if any British citizen wished to participate in trade with India, he was required to become a shareholder of the East India Company, through which he could earn dividends when the company performed well. Got my point? Independent trade outside the framework of the East India Company was strictly prohibited, as the company enjoyed exclusive monopoly rights over the Indian trade. This was the thing we have discussed several times. And several factors contributed to this ideological shift, which led to the curtailment of the East India Company's commercial monopoly and opened the Indian trade to British private traders. Right. So now we are going to look into those factors which are responsible for opening the doors of Indian trade to the British private traders outside the purview of East India Company. Apart from the East India Company, now from the provisions of the 1813 Charter Act, every other British trader also allowed to trade with India in the basket one goods. Every other British trader was also allowed to trade with India. So for doing such, for bringing such provision in the 1813 Charter Act, these are the factors. These are the factors which contributed for opening the doors of Indian trade to the British traders. Right. First one, Napoleon's continental system. The continental system of Napoleon, which was during the period of 1806 to 1814, this was a major reason for opening the doors of Indian trade. So here, the continental system means Napoleon has mandated all the European nations which were under the control of the France, to close the gates, to close their ports for the British ships. No other European power which is under the control of the French has to open their ports. So they want to create a deadlock, or because Britain being a separate country from Europe, separated by the English Channel. So whenever the Britain want to trade with Europe, so it has to park its ship in one of the ports of the European nations. So the France, the Napoleon has mandated all the European nations which were under the control of the France to close their ports for British ships. So this is known as the continental system. So Napoleon's continental system, which was existent from 1806 to 1814, sought to block it actually sought to block the British trade with Europe. So Napoleon's continental system, which is seeking to block the British trade with Europe. So British trade with Europe was hampered during the continental system. So the alternative was for all the British traders was the Indian trade. So British traders pressurized the British Parliament to open the doors of Indian trade. Because of the continental system, we are not able to trade with any of the European nations. Our trading activities are hampered because of the continental system. So we need some alternative trading nation, some alternative way to trade. To survive, we need some alternative. So the alternative was India. So the British traders, from the long time, they are pressuring the British Parliament to open the gates of India. And during the continental system, it was very imperative for the British traders, and they pressurized the British Parliament to open the gates of Indian trade. Just go to this. Under this system, Napoleon ordered all European nations under the French control or influence to close their ports to British ships and prohibit the import of. So, in large scale, they wanted to end the British trade with Europe. They wanted to end the British trade with Europe. So, the British traders who involved in the British trade with Europe, they wanted some alternative. So, they suggested the British Parliament to open the gates of Indian trade. Right. So, in response, British traders turned their attention towards India, a region of rich raw materials such as cotton, jute, and spices. So, whatever the deadlock that was there in the Britain with respect to Europe, so that British traders were not able to trade with Europe. Now, the British traders were pressurizing the British Parliament to open the gates of India to trade with India, right? Right. So, this redirection of trade from Europe to India, underscored the strategic importance of India in sustaining the Britain's economic during the wartime disruptions. During the continental system period 1806 to 1814, the diversion of trading activities from Europe to India has signified the importance of India from the perspective of Britain's economic. From the perspective of Britain's economy, India was a very much crucial for that to sustain Britain's economy. Got my point? So the second factor is American Civil War, which occurred between 1861 to 1865. Right. The second factor we are referring is to American Civil War of 1861 to 65. Here, the American Civil War that is occurred actually much later. So we are referring to the time period of 1813 Charter Act, right? But the American Civil War, which occurred much later after a decades of Charter Act, but the repercussions of American Civil War were felt even during the starting decades of the 19th century. So America is very important for Britain from the perspective of cotton trade. From the perspective of cotton trade, America is very important, right? So such repercussions, the Britain felt that if in case the supply chain from the America is halted, then there is a huge loss in the Manchester and Liverpool cities. Those are very known for the cotton produced goods. So to sustain the supply of raw materials, the Britain has to diversify its markets. And the alternative found was India. So you can ask me a question that even before the 1813 Charter Act, the cotton from India is going towards Britain, right? So what is the change after 1813? So here the change is prior to 1813, only East India Company is involved in exporting the cotton. Only East India Company is involved in exporting the cotton. But after 1813, every other British trader was allowed to export cotton from India, was allowed to trade with India in cotton, in spices, in turmeric, in sugar, right, in jute, except tea. In all other commodities, the British traders were allowed to trade with India. So you could imagine. So if East India Company is alone exploiting the Indian natural resources, what is the extent of allowing all the British traders to exploit the natural resources of the India? So on a large scale, they are exploiting the natural resources of India. In a way, the traditional handicrafts industries in India, got diminished and they got destroyed because of opening the gates of trade to all the British traders. They actually procured whatever the raw material that is available in India. They got the raw material, and with the raw material, the industries in England, they produced some goods, and all those goods were dumped into Indian markets. So raw materials were taken away. They produced some goods with the machines there, and whatever the produced goods were there, they were again dumped into India. With this, the handicrafts industries, the cottage industries, India, which were prevalent even during the age-old times, they were totally destroyed. Got my point? Right. So as a result, British is increasingly sought to diversify its cotton supply sources to reduce dependency on the United States. India therefore emerged as a vital alternative, firmly establishing itself as a key supplier to Britain's rapidly expanding textile industry. We have discussed that. Right. The third one is industrial revolution. Right. Here the third factor is industrial revolution. So even before the East India Company exploiting the natural resources of India, and it is exporting all the raw materials from India to England. It was the case. But after the onset of industrial revolution, majorly in 1770s or 1780s, so whatever the raw materials that were procured from India by the East India Company were not sufficient for the industries over there. So the industry is very hungry of the raw materials, very hungry of the raw materials. They are producing millions of products, millions of goods within no time. Because of such reason, whatever the amount of the raw materials that are procuring by the East India Company, that is not sufficient for the industries situated in London. So because of such reason, the industrial revolution became a catalyst for the demand of opening the doors of Indian trade for all the British traders. So British traders has taken this as a point, as a catalyst, and they pressurized the British government that if you open the gates of Indian trade to us, we can supply as much as raw material that the industries require in London. We can supply as much as raw material that is required for the industries. East India Company alone cannot do this. Allow us, allow the British traders to trade with India. We can exploit the resources of India. We can get all the raw materials from India and we can give it to the industries. And whatever the manufactured goods are there that are being built in England, we can take them, we can dump them in Indian markets. So this was the lobbying by the British private traders, which became fruitful in 1813 through the 1813 Charter Act. Just go through this. Nothing much is required to explain this. The fourth factor is private traders lobbying. Just now I explained that. So as Britain's industrial economy expanded, private merchants long excluded from India's profitable trade by the company's monopoly from 1609 till 1813. From 1609 till 1813, monopoly rights were granted to the East India Company. Right? Only in 1813, in the basket one, the monopoly rights were taken off. The monopoly rights were withdrawn only in the basket one. Still, there were monopoly rights in the basket two. We have discussed that. They argued that liberalized trading system would benefit Britain economically by increasing the competition, lowering the prices, and expanding the exports of the British manufactured goods. So they argued that we can get whatever the amount that is possible from, whatever the amount of what we call raw materials that are possible from India, and we can give it to the industries, and industries can make the manufactured goods, and we can take the manufactured goods and dump them into Indian markets. So they argued like this. These arguments gained political momentum at home, that is at London, where economic liberalism and the principles of free trade were rapidly gaining ideological dominance. Because of Adam Smith. Adam Smith, he published a document, an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. An inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations, which was published in 1776, where Adam Smith argued that monopolies stifled economic growth and efficiency. Monopolies stifled economic growth and efficiency. So the British Parliament or the mood of the British nation was turning towards liberalized economy from monopoly regime towards liberalized economy. The mood of the nation is turning, and Adam Smith's document is favoring such kind of transition. Parliament recognized that opening the Indian markets would enhance British global strategic position. So by opening the doors of India's trading to all the British traders, it will enhance the strategic position of the Britain. It will enhance the strategic position in the world, especially in Asia, while simultaneously securing the only thing here is to make the supply of raw products to the machines. So the supply of raw materials for the machines is the main theme here. So while simultaneously securing a reliable supply of raw materials for industries and providing expanded markets, and whatever the manufactured goods are there in London, they have to be again dumped into Indian markets. East India Company is also doing that, but on a large scale. If we allow the British traders to do trade with India, they can get whatever the amount that is possible from India, raw materials, and they can dump whatever the amount that is produced in London. So because of such reasons, the British Parliament has enacted 1813 Charter Act. So I mean, the 1813 Charter Act has included a provision to open the doors of trade with India for all the British traders. In this climate of economic transformation, Parliament enacted Charter Act of 1813, which ended the company's monopoly over Indian trade, except tea trade, marking a decisive shift from the free competition. Sorry, marking a decisive shift towards free competition, from monopolistic regime towards free competition. From monopolistic regime towards free competition, there was a shift in the 1813 Act. All British merchants were now permitted to trade freely in India, subjected to a licensing system to prevent exploitation and maintain state oversight. To maintain state oversight and to prevent monopolistic regime, so a licensing system was put in place. Whoever the British national, whoever the British trader who takes that particular license, they will be allowed to trade with India. The East India Company retained exclusive monopoly over trade with India, over trade with China and tea trade with India. Tea trade with in India and trade with China. Under these two segments, the East India Company still having monopoly, which remained highly profitable and politically sensitive. It also continued its monopoly over tea exports from India, a major source of revenue. Under the China trade, the East India Company is more concerned about opium and tea. So from China, the British East India Company is importing what we call opium and tea. So opium and tea are very what we call profitable ventures, very profitable ventures. Still, the profitable ventures such as tea trade with India and China trade were still under the auspices of East India Company, under the control of East India Company. Right. So this we have seen that through 1813 Act, this was done away with. However, this was still alive. This was still alive with the East India Company. So the conclusion here, just go through that. This is the conclusion to factors responsible for opening the doors to the British traders in India. This is the conclusion for that. Just go to that. And in the next slide, we are going to see. So this is the end of the lecture. Okay. Right. So far we have completed the first part of Charter Act, wherein we have delved into the Charter Act of 1793 and the Charter Act of 1813. So the remaining are Charter Act of 33 and Charter Act of 1853. Right. So we have completed 2 Charter Acts under Chapter 2. Hope you are getting the point. Right. Thank you. Have a great day.